The banging started before sunrise, sharp, aggressive, impatient. At first, I thought it was the neighbors. But then I realized it was coming from my front door, and the sound carried that familiar rhythm I'd grown to dread. She always knocked like she was trying to break the house open. My husband wasn't home, he had left for an early shift. I stepped into the hallway, still wrapped in a blanket, and the knocking stopped the second my foot hit the floor. It was the kind of silence that tells you the person outside isn't leaving, they're listening. I walked closer, and before I even spoke, I heard her voice on the other side of the door, "Open up." No greeting. No reason. Just a command. I didn't answer. Something in me had changed over the months of her pushing, demanding, inspecting, criticizing. My hand hovered over the doorknob. And then I saw the metal turn. Slowly. Carefully. Someone was unlocking my door from the outside. I felt my chest seize, and I took a step back. She pushed the door open with her shoulder and walked inside like she owned the place. "Why didn't you answer?" she asked, brushing past me and taking off her shoes like this was her home. I asked her what she was doing there at 6 in the morning. She glanced around the living room as if checking whether I had cleaned, whether the curtains were ironed, whether the kitchen was spotless. "I'm just making sure everything is okay," she said, like she was doing me a favor. She didn't even notice the shock on my face. Or maybe she did and enjoyed it. When I demanded to know how she got in, she waved her hand dismissively and said my husband had given her a key for emergencies. I stood there, realizing he hadn't just hidden it from me, he had lied about it every time I asked why. She always seemed to know when we were home, when we were out, when we were sleeping. She started opening cabinets. Inspecting shelves. Commenting under her breath about dust, the placement of dishes, the color of towels I'd chosen. She did it with a tone I can only describe as ownership. I didn't even have the strength to fight her then. I told her she needed to leave. She told me she'd leave when she was done checking. Like I was a teenager and she was inspecting her son's room. Like I wasn't the woman who lived here, paid for half the mortgage, and tried to build a home with her son. When she finally left, I broke down. Not just because she entered without permission, but because the look in her eyes told me something terrifying. She didn't consider it my home at all. Only hers and her son's. I waited for my husband to return, rehearsing how to tell him calmly. But when he walked in and I told him his mother had unlocked our door, his reaction hit me harder than her intrusion. "She has every right," he said. Every right. Those words echoed in my head for days. I realized then that I was outnumbered. Not in the sense of argument, but spiritually. Emotionally. He didn't see me as fully separate from his mother, not in boundaries, not in privacy, not even in autonomy. It wasn't just disrespect. It was erasing me from my own life. Things only got worse from that moment. The next invasion happened 2 weeks later. I woke up from an afternoon nap because I heard footsteps in the hallway. The kind of slow, cautious footsteps someone makes when they don't want to be caught. I ran out, heart pounding, and there she was, standing in my kitchen, holding my mail in her hands like she was sorting it. "What are you doing?" I shouted. She looked up, startled but trying to hide it. "I was just organizing," she said. "You should be grateful I care." I realized then that it wasn't care. It was control. The twisted, suffocating kind. The next time, she didn't even pretend. I came home from grocery shopping and found her sitting on my couch, watching my TV, drinking from one of my cups. She didn't flinch when I walked in. "Your husband said I could come by," she said. He denied that later, insisting she misunderstood. But the truth was clear, she didn't need permission because she never saw a boundary she couldn't step over. The final straw came the day she tried to rearrange my bedroom. I found her in my closet, holding my clothes, inspecting them like I was some sort of intruder in her family's life. She told me she moved my dresses to another section because they didn't look flattering. I felt something inside me twist and snap. I told her to get out. She stepped closer and whispered that she wasn't going anywhere, because a wife is replaceable, family is not. I remember the feeling that washed over me. Not fear. Not anger. Clarity. Cold, sharp, unmistakable clarity. I walked out of the room, called my husband, put the phone on speaker, and told him his mother was in our bedroom again. He told me I was exaggerating. He said she probably just came by to help. He refused to take it seriously. That night, I packed a bag and left for a hotel. I needed space, not from the marriage, but from the delusion that things would get better if I just tried harder. When my husband found out, he looked shocked, as if he genuinely didn't understand why his mother going through my underwear drawer was a problem. 2 days later, while I was still at the hotel, I saw a notification on my doorbell camera. I opened the feed and there she was, trying to unlock the door again. Only this time, I had removed the lock she had a key to and installed a keypad lock with a code only I knew. She tried the old key, then another, then another. She looked furious. She pounded on the door, shouting that she knew I was inside. When no one answered, she walked to the driveway and tried to open my car. That was when I realized it wasn't just entitlement. It was obsession. I sent the footage to my husband. He didn't respond. Instead, I got a call from his mother, screaming that I had humiliated her. That I was destroying the family. That I should have told her before changing the lock to her son's house. I hung up. It took 3 weeks before my husband finally admitted she'd crossed a line. Not because he understood it, he only admitted it because other relatives told him he needed to control his mother. Control her, not support me. That difference said everything. I told him I wasn't coming back until he returned her key and set boundaries she wouldn't dare to break. He told me he would talk to her. But deep down, I knew talking wouldn't do anything. He was raised to believe she had authority over every part of his life. And she believed it too. The truth is, I didn't just leave because of her. I left because of who he became when she was around. Small. Weak. Defensive. A mirror reflection of her expectations. I didn't want to spend my life fighting for a man who was already claimed by someone else, not romantically, but in ownership and loyalty. The last time I saw her, she wasn't screaming. She wasn't demanding. She just looked at me and said, "You were never one of us." And for the first time, I agreed with her. I didn't want to be. I moved out 1 month later. He begged me to stay, promised therapy, promised boundaries. But promises from someone who's never stood up for himself don't hold weight. I told him I hoped he learned to separate love from control, but I couldn't wait for him to grow. Now, months later, I sleep with my door locked by choice, not fear. I wake up without checking if someone is in my hallway. I live without feeling watched. Without feeling invaded. Without feeling erased. Some people think the mother-in-law was the villain. Some think my husband was. But the truth is, the real villain was the silence. The excuses. The normalization of someone walking all over my life until I didn't recognize myself. I didn't leave to be dramatic. I left to survive. And sometimes survival looks like a new lock, a new apartment, and the realization that peace is worth more than any marriage where you're outnumbered in your own home.